Tanya couldn't move. She could only watch as a wave of destructive energy rushed towards her. Even if her mana reserves were full, and even if she wasn't collapsing from exhaustion, it wasn't certain she could have blocked it. The power of this wave was different, orders of magnitude stronger than what she had felt before. Obviously, the opponent had been holding back in the fight until now, and Tanya knew it. That was why she had strived with all her might to finish him off as quickly as possible. But it happened anyway. Damn it! What kind of monsters inhabit this absurd world? Suddenly, a large black shadow blocked her view. The back of one of her most trusted people appeared before her. Boom! An explosion roared, followed by the screeching of metal as if someone were prying open a tin can. A wave of piercing wind slashed nearby. Space itself seemed to be severed by cuts. The ground exploded, and the air evaporated, destroying everything in the vicinity. Only the space behind that 2-meter-tall black shadow remained untouched. Yoshi! Tanya could only shout powerlessly. Obviously, he had shielded her, and Tanya was certain that even he wouldn't get off lightly from an attack like that. Finally, the raging energy subsided. The giant was dragged back a couple of meters, but somehow he stood his ground, or almost stood. Yoshi lowered the arms that had covered his head. His arms were slashed as if a can opener had gone over his armor, and the same applied to the rest of his body. However, his head took the brunt of it. Half of his helmet was missing, sheared off diagonally. A line of blood stretched from left to right, revealing half of his face and an eye that held a very serious and focused expression. He was focused on only one target, the guy in white and gold robes, wielding 6 swords, who was crawling out of a ravine like some kind of spider, stabbing his blades into the earth. Ah, you bitches, you're so annoying. Screw Cow's wishes. My demonic sword Graham demands blood, especially your blood, Alyosha Popovich. Who would have thought I'd run into a second loser trash right here? His red eyes drilled into the giant's figure, as if wanting to pierce him through. But even though he glared daggers, his condition was far from good. His white robe was torn, blood streaked his face, and while half his hair was snow white like Freed's, the other half was black with soot. Maybe he survived the explosion, but the attack definitely had an effect. Don't call me by that name, Sieg. I've already renounced it. Now I am simply Yoshi, the giant replied in an incredibly serious tone. As if I care about the wishes of trash. Still disgracing the name of your great ancestor, the Slavic Bogatyr, who they say could rival Heracles himself in strength. Although that doesn't apply to you, because as it turns out, even great blood can't turn shit into candy. Trash will always remain trash. The giant didn't react to his statement. He just continued to observe. But Tanya noticed he was acting this way because of her, not wanting to provoke the enemy unnecessarily. He was desperately looking for a way out of the situation. Who would have thought she would become such a burden right now due to exhaustion? The white-haired guy's gaze, cold as steel, fixed on the fragile figure behind the giant. Picking up and using a defective product thrown away by the church and us, Saint Heido Tatiana? Are resources and personnel really so scarce for Azazel that he can't even allocate useful people? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Chopping up losers won't feel too bad. Ha ha. Tanya smirked back at him. Or maybe someone's hands are just too clumsy to effectively use the resources they have? There is no manager worse than one who looks for faults around him without noticing his own wretchedness. Though it's unlikely you'll have the opportunity to realize this, because very soon someone is going to arrange an accelerated course on divine judgment for you. Siegfried frowned, but then smiled. And what can you do in the current situation? Yes, you caught me off guard just now, I admit it. He looked over his own appearance. But you won't get a second chance. Or do you think that know anything will save you?
He pointed his sword, blazing with a mass of hostile energy, at Yoshi. Now I will dispel your delusions. Gram will drink its fill of your blood today. In one hand was the sword Gram, vibrating with gathered power. In the other was a blade radiating cold, which he used for defense. Behind him, 4 more arms emerged from his back, each holding a sword. The third controlled wind to boost his speed. The fourth was a light blade like Tanya's spears or Freed's weapon. Tanya didn't understand what the other 2 did yet, but the main threat was of course this Gram. In it, she felt a power even greater than her newly acquired blade. And Tanya knew Yoshi wouldn't be able to block this energy, as it surpassed the energy Gremory used by an order of magnitude. Ideally, they should retreat, but in her current state, Tanya could do almost nothing. "Ane-san, I'm using that. I'll try to buy time. You please wait for reinforcements," came the voice of her faithful resource. Tanya ground her teeth, nearly pulverizing them. She understood immediately what he meant, and it pissed her off, because she herself had placed a ban on that ability. But considering the situation, there really was no other way. "Yoshi, don't you dare die, otherwise I'll drag you back even from hell," she shouted at his back. "Keep in mind, I already have connections there." "Ha, as expected of you, Ane-san. Then Unfortunately, he didn't have time to finish. "Destroy, turfing." Siegfried swung an unfamiliar sword from behind him and... boom! Massive hands scooped Tanya up and threw her aside before she could react. Boom! An immense destructive force, creating a crater and cracking the earth, crashed down on Yoshi. Even the ground subsided. Tanya realized immediately that must be how he escaped the explosion earlier, by blasting a path underground with force. Another troublesome sword. What destructive power! "And this is a snack for you, loser. Pierce nothing." The last unfamiliar sword made its swing. A wave of the sharpest cutting energy erupted towards Yoshi. Tanya remembered this power. This was how he attacked them from underground. It reached the bogatyr, tearing open his armor like a tin can. However, Yoshi stood his ground, not reacting, only protecting his vital spots. "This is the end for you, trash." Siegfried appeared behind him, stepping out of a whirlwind. That insane movement speed again. "Heracles wanted to tear your head off himself, but he'll have to settle for your corpse." The gram in the exorcist's hand soared into the air, and... boom!
It crashed down on the dark bogatyr. His armor was already mangled beyond recognition. A wave of destructive energy struck the area and rose skyward. A pillar of earth flew up 10 meters. Insane power. The shock wave from the residual energy spread out, kicking up dust, but it was almost harmless. Tanya, even in her current state, felt nothing as she landed a couple of dozen meters away, along with her brother's body, which had been thrown slightly further. Even now, Yoshi hadn't forgotten the primary objective. Obviously, the main force wasn't dispersed. The entire might of Gram was focused clearly and squarely on Yoshi. But Tanya was calm. She didn't bat an eye, merely observing with a frown. What a cold-blooded reaction. Suddenly, Siegfried appeared from a wind vortex in front of her. "Just as I thought. You are a perfect fit for our organization. After all, you understand there's no point in getting attached to defective and spent material. You are very rational and always choose the right solutions. It's a pity to kill you. Join us, and let's forget what happened before. This is my final offer. Agree if you don't want to end up like that trash." Tanya raised her head and looked into his eyes. At first glance, rational eyes. But Tanya had seen many people over her 3 lives, and she knew this type well. People ready to do anything for their goals. Tanya was one of those people too, it's true, and she would go to great lengths to achieve her desired goal. But there was something in their approaches that differed, a critical difference she couldn't turn a blind eye to. "One question," Tanya replied. You say you exterminate supernatural beings in various mystical filth, but why do you do it? What do you want to achieve? For Tanya, the answer to this question was critically important. The smile on Siegfried's face stretched wide like a predator. Achieve? What a stupid question. We simply want to reach the summit possible for a human, to realize human potential to the maximum, and it doesn't matter who stands in the way. Realize potential? Tanya frowned. In what way? By destroying everyone except humans themselves? Of course, it is supernatural beings who constantly interfere in human lives. Eliminating them, that is our goal. Just as Tanya thought. Their goals were fundamentally different. After all, Tanya's goal was far from the genocide of everything except humans. Yes, to get rid of being X, she was ready to go to great lengths, but that only concerned him. That bastard went too far playing supreme being. As for her goals, it had always been just one thing. I see. Then here is my answer, Sig. Burn it into your memory. She showed him her middle finger with the trademark smile on her lips. I am only interested in a peaceful life, and for that, I will continue to eliminate bastards like you. Sig stared at her like she was an alien, and then, you really are a crazy bitch. Peaceful life after what you caused here? I haven't heard a funnier joke. But then his gaze turned to ice. Anyway, it doesn't matter. You've made your choice, and you will regret it. Are you sure that will be me? Tanya sneered. Thanks for wasting your final moments on this useless chatter. The raging energy behind them was intensifying. The energy vortex that rose after the strike of Graham refused to fade. And that was strange. Such a thing shouldn't be happening. Something inexplicable was occurring, for an outsider, but not for Tanya. She just continued to drill her eyes into the energy vortex, the concentration of which was only growing. Zig turned around and stared at the source in shock. It can't be. He's still alive? He also noticed the anomaly. How did that trash? Don't tell me it's the balance. He didn't have time to finish. Boom! Suddenly, he was blown away like a doll. A thick beam of energy erupted from the vortex and crashed straight into the priest. Following that, the vortex dissipated and a figure flew out in massive dark armor, entirely covered in red veins resembling fiery arteries. The giant's hands had transformed into predatory, elongated claws shining with crimson light. Graw! An insane howl rang out, half animal, and the black figure lunged at the figure in white. Very quickly, they vanished into a flurry of energy flashes. Yoshi's sacred gear, Blade Blacksmith, configured as Armor of Mercy, is a very powerful artifact, capable of absorbing all types of energy. The conductivity and amount of energy depend on the user. By Tanya's estimates, he could absorb even a nuclear explosion if the user had enough stamina. And stamina is the key problem of this gear, because absorption above a certain limit takes a heavy toll on the user. It was like that with Grimory. When Tanya discovered this, she always thought about how to overcome this weakness, so she constantly drove Yoshi, forcing him to walk on the edge of overload, so he would increase his limit. But one day, something happened during these trainings. They unexpectedly yielded different results. The gear suddenly changed. Balance Breaker, the last berserker. That was what they achieved in the process. Yoshi tried to do something with the energy that was overflowing in him, threatening to destroy and scatter his consciousness. And one day, when it was raging, he found an outlet for it. Damn it, he actually did it. Tanya tried to crawl away, but her body listened poorly. The special technique of Yoshi's sacred gear, a very powerful technique called Balance Breaker. Siegfried was right, and this technique had a number of huge advantages. For example, while in a normal state, Yoshi constantly expends his strength and stamina. This technique literally pumped the user with energy to the limit and helped him recover from any injuries. The trick was that Yoshi could utilize all the energy he had absorbed prior to this. The capabilities and conductivity of the gear increased many-fold over. Speed, strength, and energy also increased manifold. The combat power was staggering. But there was a huge problem. The figures fought in an insane dance, leaving crater after crater. They were moving away quickly, but the shock waves spread throughout the district. And the stronger the energy flashes were, the more Tanya frowned. The technique demanded too high a price. Not only did Yoshi completely lose control of himself, but it was simply impossible to maintain such overloads for long. It is literally a last-chance technique. Once activated, there is no turning back. He won't last long like this. Tanya could only exhale weakly. Damn, how helpless she was. Tanya gritted her teeth and sighed heavily, gathered all her will into a fist, and turned her exhausted body towards her brother, after which she crawled in his direction with difficulty. She had to hang out until reinforcements arrived at any cost. Just a little bit left, just a little more, and her plan would finally be realized. As long as Freed and Rainaray, Middled didn't let her down. If they did everything right, she would come out of this situation with a huge profit. Coo.